Children in primary schools will be taught about relationships in a bid to tackle homophobic bullying if Labour wins the general election. A spokesperson for the party said age-appropriate sex and relationship education clearly doesn't mean kids having sex lessons at 5. Good primary schools already teach their kids about respect for others and why bullying is wrong. And good secondaries teach them about issues such as staying safe in relationships and online consent. That's what age-appropriate means. So let's look at the broader issue. Should we teach children about sex and relationships earlier than we currently do? To discuss this, we're joined by Andrea Williams. She's from Christian Concern and she joins us from our central London studios. And Hilary Panic from the teenage pregnancy charity Straight Talking is here in the studio. To you first, Hilary. I mean, 16-year-old girls who get pregnant, they understand biology. They know what sex leads to. Does sex education actually work at all? They clearly, by that age, know the mechanics. They've been taught in biology what it's about, but they still get pregnant, don't they?
Well, it's interesting you say that because we have worked with teenage parents who clearly didn't know about sex education. They didn't have it right. They were still believing a lot of myths about contraception, about how not to get pregnant. They're getting their sex education from the internet, from each other, which is not accurate information. We need to get the experts to teach them correctly.
OK. Andrea Williams, isn't this a fair point? Children these days are getting information about sex from all sorts of different avenues. They're getting it on the phone, they're getting it on their computers. Isn't it right that at school, even now, sadly, at a young age, they need to be explained to about the rights and wrongs, about sex being part of a loving relationship and about the dangers of things like homophobic bullying?
I think that what we see, of course, is a culture that's highly sexualised, but within that, a school system, an education system, for 3 decades has been giving sex education to our children. But in that time, what have we seen? We've seen increased teenage pregnancies, increased sexually transmitted diseases, and increased confusion amongst the children. And that, I think, is in a sense
being taught it in school, or is it because it's not going far enough in school?
I think, in a sense, it's because the schools have become involved, possibly over-involved in this. And actually, what we need to be doing more increasingly is ensuring that it's the parents that are the primary educators of the children with regard to this issue. And I think that we don't. And I don't think that we're actually saying that enough. And to think that what we're going to begin to do is to introduce sex education into primary schools when our children should actually just be safe and left to be innocent and protected in a very kind and loving and nurturing way, and not being exposed to these things is actually what needs to happen.
OK, Hilary, isn't that a fair point, that actually children do need to have that information, but isn't this information that it's more appropriate for their parents to give to me? And I've got a 6-year-old boy, he's already asked me really kind of quite searching questions about reproduction, and I've given him straight answers, but I wouldn't necessarily expect his teachers to give him those answers.
Well, I think you're probably quite confident in talking to your child about sexual health, sex education, but I don't think most parents are. The fact is that we're not keeping children safe at 5 years old, 6 years old. We need to be teaching them appropriate sex education, which is about body parts, which is about keeping them safe from predators, from paedophiles. We're not keeping them safe at the moment. And I think that sex education in schools, relationships and sex education, is very, very patchy. We know this. And we've had a policy of not having relationships and sex education in schools for a very, very long time. And it clearly hasn't worked. And what we need to do now is to bring good quality relationships and sex education into schools to educate our children from a young age very, very appropriately. And I stress that it must be the right education at the right time for children, and so that they are prepared, protected, and so that they're not learning from the internet, from each other, and that it becomes a subject that is uncomfortable, that is to be laughed about, and that includes bullying and homophobic behaviour as well.
Andrea Williams, we asked our viewers what they thought, and on Twitter we had an enormous response. We had a lot of people who said, agreeing with you in the sense that they think it's appropriate to have sex education, but not till secondary school. A lot of people, though, interestingly, from the younger generation, a lot of people who are in their teens getting in touch saying, Jai, for example, I think it's worth giving an education rather than society, which can have a very negative impact. Daniela, she said she had sex education at that age. She thinks it's important. So actually there are a lot of young people out there who are welcoming the idea that they can be taught about it in a safe environment like a school and can have actual factual biological answers to any questions that they may have that their parents might feel awkward talking to them about.
Well, I think that when we think of precious little children, aged 4, aged 5, aged 6, what they need to be learning at school is really an extension of what they're learning at home. They need to be learning to read, to write, to run around the playground, to have friends. The idea that we're going to be beginning to introduce them on how to be safe with regard to sexual predators, even at that age, and allowing teachers to do that rather than the parents, is very concerning indeed. I mean, I've got a few books here about how that are aimed at primary school education. King, Uncle Bobby's Wedding, Heather Has Two Mummies, these sorts of books, which I think children of primary school age may well find. I don't know if you saw them from the camera because I'm in the remote studio here. But actually these things, I believe, are going to be very, very confusing for young 4, 5 and 6-year-olds.
They're not going to be confusing, though, to those children in those primary schools who might have two mummies or who might have two daddies, or perhaps to their classmates who might want to understand why little Johnny has two daddies and not a mummy and daddy like him. Isn't this just about educating youngsters about how society is now? We can't deny how society is.
I think that what we're seeking to do is to normalise, to foist various things that the world is pushing out there, when actually what children need to be learning at age 5 and age 6 is just about how really to discover the wonderful beauty of the world around them, rather than having to face all these sorts of things which are would be very frightening for them. And it's their own. Every parents will have different views on the various ideologies that their children are currently being confronted with in our society. And it's vital that the parents remain the primary educators. They are the experts in their children. They are the ones that love and cherish and want to nurture their children, and on these very important issues. And of course we do need to keep our children safe, but it's the parents that will know how to keep them safe, and that's something that we need to do. If the state begins to come involved and tell us how we teach our children these things from age 4, age 5, age 6, then we will be exposing our children actually to more danger, as in fact the sex education system that we've had now over decades, as I've said, has really failed our children.
Okay, let's put some of those points to...
It has not protected our children.
Okay, let's put some of those points to Hilary. And Hilary, do you think that sex education over the years has failed our children, and that our children are more at risk, as Andrea seems to suggest, as a result of sex education?
Not at all. I feel this is absolute nonsense, that what we need is sex education in a loving relationship context across the board, and we cannot rely on parents to have all the information, the correct information at their fingertips. We're very happy for parents to know, of course parents know that their children, of course they are the experts on their children, but what they are not the experts are, in general, are on contraception, sexual health, homophobic behaviour. They are not the experts in this. And we need to leave this to the teachers who are trained to do this, and we need to allow them to normalise this and to protect our children from the images that we see in pornography, that children have access to a great deal more than I think many parents think. We need to stop sexting. We need to stop that kind of exploitation of each other, of children of each other.
Yeah. Hilary Panic and Andrea Williams, I'm really sorry we're out of time. Different opinions, but what you both do agree on, what is very important, what's key to this debate, is protecting the children.